CAPSI podcast series, Conversations on African Philanthropy.
Welcome to Global Africa Conversations, brought to you by the Wits Business School Center for African Philanthropy and Social Investment. The Global Africa Conversation bring to you global African leaders from different professions, different walks of life, different interests. We have selected feminist leaders, political leaders, entrepreneurs, and NGO leaders who are working on matters of Africa's economic transformation, women's political leadership. This program is normally run by Professor Becky Moyo, who's currently on business leave, and I am standing in for him, and hopefully you will find the replacement half as competent as the main presenter. My name is Brian Tamuka Kagoro, and here we mix humor with seriousness, but we keep it real. Welcome to the Global Africa Conversation. We're here in South Africa during the G20 summit, but we're talking to global leaders who are shaping and transforming the world. And I'm joined this afternoon by Ahunna. Ahunna, I will not introduce her. I'll give her the pleasure to introduce herself. And you will understand why I was particularly keen to have a conversation with Ahunna on Global Africa. Ahunna, who is Ahunna?
You know, Brian, I always say I'm big on names. Mm-hmm. So actually, Ahunna is how my name is pronounced. It means
Ahunna.
Ahunna. It means the body of the father. Mm-hmm. It's an Igbo name. I was born in eastern Nigeria to parents from that part of the world during the Biafran War. Mm-hmm. So I grew up a war child. Spent 3 years of my formative years as an internally displaced person. Wow. My young parents had 7 of us at the time that they carted around in bushes, hiding and dodging bombs and bullets. Mm. So I'm also a war survivor. We miraculously all survived. And but I think what really was a defining moment for me in terms of who I am is the way I was raised. These parents who survived a brutal war. Regardless, had a fierce sense of justice, of treating everybody with respect. Up to this day, I have a hard time saying the word made.
Wow.
Because, even though, we weren't a rich family, we were average, a middle class family. So we had people who came to help us in the house, but my parents made sure that they were treated as part of the family. Same level of respect and understanding. We were in the kitchen cooking together. They were never to be relegated, to the point that I still remember as a child having a nanny who was called Emilia. Wow. And everyone called my mother Mama Emilia. So
I see.
She was the firstborn,
Yeah.
So I've grown up with that sense of, everybody needs to be respected, irrespective of where or who they are born to. And I think that really shaped my own choices in terms of what I did in life. And I don't think I had a very usual path as a young adult after college.
Tell us a little bit about it. What happened?
Well, I grew up at a time when we really changed from English literature to literature in English. Mm-hmm. And I was a student of literature because I couldn't pass the sciences. So I ended up with literature, but it just happened, turned out to be really exactly what I was meant to do, because taught me, or sort of led me to what my passion in life really is, understanding. We started to study protest literature, African literature at the time, Chinua Achebe. So we moved from Chaucer and Shakespeare to really starting to study the African writers.
Okay.
And of course, if you know these writers, they took us to the deep end of identity literature, what it means to be African, you know, but also the whole history. And it really made me curious about my own identity, where I come from as a post-colonial child, finding out about what was going on in South Africa with apartheid. In fact, I came here to South Africa when apartheid was still going on. And really, that had such an impact on me.
So you had come to visit, to study?
Well, I had joined a youth movement.
I see.
Yes, a kind of a Pan-African movement to really, we called it Africans for African Development. It really was reclaiming our destiny and, you know, overcoming some of the challenges about our ability to take control of what was happening to us. So Zimbabwe and South Africa were kind of grooming ground for us, and these countries were not completely free at the time. So it was very interesting coming from Nigeria and being face to face with what injustice meant and attempt systems that tried to kill your spirit and subdue you. You know, my constant companion was Steve Biko's I Write What I Like. Really, all of those started to really shape my choices in terms of what I wanted to do in life. And I volunteered for 5 years for a peace initiative that was global in nature, including getting women to take their seat at the table in peace building.
Wow. So that's and how do you end up in the UN?
Well, you know, when I was doing this Creators of Peace Women's Initiative program, which was actually initiated by a Tanzanian woman, who's a politician, one of the first female politicians in that country, who was really bothered by how the decade of women, you know, had not really produced. It hadn't surfaced the real issues. And she came to an international conference where I was also attending and said, you know, I want to challenge you guys, us, to create spaces where we can talk about the real issues and not just represent our political views or what our countries want us to say. As women, we really need to take responsibility for real creation of peace that starts in the heart, in the home, and then take it to the community. So I did volunteer at the time to be the international coordinator, and it took me all over the world. But you know, as I was doing that, I realized that there was a lot about the world that I didn't understand. And I wanted to understand the forces that rule the world around us. And so I applied to go back to school. So I went to the US to do my master's degree in international relations. And I discovered the UN. I mean, I always knew about the UN, but I thought, if I'm going to be part of a movement that wants to bring world peace and justice to the world, I want to be in the UN system, because that seemed to be the only organization that stood out on trying to do all of this. So I was in New York studying, deliberately targeting the UN. So I entered the UN quite intentionally.
I see. And you've been there for some time now. In fact, one of the few who have had the privilege to see country level work in different parts, to lead that work in different contexts of development, and now to lead that work as the director for the Regional Bureau for the Continent and associate administrator for the UNDP. So what is if you think about Ahunna entering the UN and Ahunna running the UN, and you were to give somebody who's not, who has the same passions as you, some advice, what would that advice be?
You know, I mean, I always hesitate because I'm not a careerist. You know, I really didn't pursue a career at the UN. I followed passion and purpose.
How many times did you quit in your head?
I never. You know, I really pursued spaces where I could actualize my mission. You know, for me, the UN was always more a mission than a job. And today, I mean, a lot of people are looking for work.
Career path, yeah.
and they come to me, and I'm the wrong person to advise on career path because I truly didn't have a strategy in terms of career. I just, you know, I knew I wanted to work at the UN. And I knew I wanted to work on Africa. You know, when I traveled on this continent, which was unusual, it was quite unique for someone in their early 20s out of Africa, touring Africa. You know, I got to know Africa so well beyond my own country, and that I fell in love. You know, and cultivated a real passion. I wanted to be in that space. So all my work in the UN has been mostly about Africa, and so it's been that collision of, you know, both a purpose and passion, and that has defined the jobs that I've taken. I started off with a magazine in the Department of Public Information at the time. That was my entry point. It was called Africa Recovery. I don't know if you remember.
Yes, I remember.
So I was a principal writer for Africa Recovery. And at that time, we were covering all the peacekeeping missions on the continent and writing the stories of what was going on in those missions. And then I joined the Department of Peacekeeping Operations in the Lessons Learned unit, where we were looking at peacekeeping missions and what lessons were coming out so that we could improve them. And then I went on to work for the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Wow. Really deployed to a war zone. I started in Sierra Leone, where I spent 3 years during the war, writing about war and the impact on people. So I was there, the Humanitarian Affairs Officer responsible for issuing those SITREPs. And then after 10 years as a humanitarian worker, I really saw that we needed to go beyond just picking up the pieces. So I took a real interest in development because I felt development was where we could deal with the root causes,
with some of the structural
the underlying structural issues. So I got involved in UNDP.
Well,
and for the next 10 years, I was a UNDP resident representative, UN coordinator in 3 African countries. And that sort of moved me on to the current position as Africa Director, which for me is actually a dream job. I always wanted
because you are doing your passion.
Yes, exactly. I always wanted to be in a position where I could first of all, change the narrative of the continent. Because I think in those days when I traveled in Africa, I saw earlier on that Africa was misunderstood in terms of its value, you know, in terms of the, you know, the profound gift of the continent and its people, you know. And I thought also that was going to be in the way of our developing. You know, because Africa had been written off as a place where poverty had found a home and nothing happens, and we just treat it as a case of charity. So I did want to bring a different lens to this continent because I knew that not only did Africa have something to offer to itself, it had something to offer to the world. So that's been sort of my guiding principle. How do we use the UN platform, and definitely UNDP being a core development, premier development agency of the UN, to tell a different story on the continent, to feature the strength, the resilience, and the richness of this continent. And also to give a message to Africans that they themselves would need to rise to a different tune and not accept that they stay at the bottom of the pyramid, or that they're not able to take care of their own.
To do anything about their plight, yeah. So tell me, what keeps you up at night? You know, are there things that are, many things matter in your job. In fact, looking after such a big continent, there'll be many things. But what if this job were not there? And there are certain things that I know from your background, from what you're saying, there must be certain things that are really above everything else, really keep you up at night and you're most passionate about.
Yeah, so Brian, I think for me, I'm most uncomfortable, restless, and unsettled about the fact that we have such a rich continent, and yet the poorest people live in that continent. I think that contradiction is something that I wrestle with. And it's something that sort of pushes me every day to see that we right this wrong. That it's not possible for the same continent that has enriched the rest of the world to harbor some of the poorest people in the world. And trying to understand that puzzle and come to a place where we start to change it, where Africa's resources work for Africa's people. You know, where, you know, we change the barriers, the structural bottlenecks that distort life on the continent.
Say a little bit more about these structural barriers. What are they? You know, I was talking to some young person that said, you know, Brian, all this Pan-Africanism, Africa is cursed. So went into all sorts of things about corruption. You can't blame anybody else. You can't blame history. You can't blame structural issues. But from your vantage point, what are the barriers?
I think the first one is in the mindset, really. I think perhaps, I mean, we can't write off history. You always have to factor in what has happened on this continent, from slavery to colonialism to neocolonialism. You know, it's all had an effect, you know, including our education system, where compared to the rest of the world, I feel that the mindset of Africans is yet to evolve into full confidence and belief in their own assets and values. And I think it's the same mindset that makes it possible for Africa to be so vulnerable to exploitation and extraction.
Because you think you need help, you need external supervision.
Yes, we actually, exactly, we need external validation, that's it. But also we feel, we fail to take our own assets seriously. I mean, we're so distracted by what we think others can give us that we're not able to really focus on what we have. I think Africa has been conditioned to focus on what it lacks than what it has. And this is why today we've got, you know, we talk about illicit financial flows. We've got capital flowing, more capital getting out of the continent and enriching other parts of the world. And then Africa gets quite comfortable with then receiving aid. Even when that aid that's coming in, it doesn't match the amount of money the continent loses. So Africa generates money, resources, that it's not mobilizing for its own
development.
And I think it's not, I'm not going to blame anybody or even the sort of financial institutions and global structures. I think it's a choice, a decision. It's an agency that Africa needs to claim back, to say what we must focus on what we have and how we develop what we have for our own. And we must reduce the distraction that takes us away from those areas of priorities. Lots of other places did that. You know, when Japan was developing, it closed its doors and moved inside to, you know, to connect its cultural values to its economic aspirations. That's the other thing, is we've also disconnected this. I mean, if you just take this country or this region, when you talk about the philosophy of Ubuntu, which everybody talks about today, I am because you are. You know, these are the core values that shaped life on the continent and the concept of community. And, you know, if we look at the way the world is organized today, what is healthy is coming back to that concept of community, where we manage our interdependence. Because we have this interdependence, and in the name of prosperity and individual success, we have grossly mismanaged our interdependence. And I think that the African values, if we actually go back to them and stick with them and connect them to how we are modernizing, we will have a much healthier development practice, much healthier society, but also a healthier planet. Because you go into a lot of African culture, you see what we're talking about today in terms of climate change, the respect for nature, the harmony, the search for harmony with nature. You know, these are all principles that somehow got
shelved as we pursued to like other people. The late Tajuddin Abdul Rahim's two favorite statements were, there is enough to meet everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. And the second was, let's organize, let's not agonize.
Exactly.
And I've been seeing you in your role at the UNDP from before COVID, during COVID, and now, as there is big talk about global reforms to the multilateral system, implementation of Agenda 2063, financing for development, pact for the future. I've seen you positioning Africa through using the agency of the UNDP actively. Walk us through, because you've been visible as an institution in the space, but doing some very different things. So I'm curious about why, how, and to what end.
No, I think for me, if I look at the world and look at Africa, I ask myself, what is Africa's advantage? And that's really where I bring the lens, because it's a highly competitive world. It's also a very transactional world today. So I look at the young people, say this is where Africa is cutting edge, because you know, if you just cast your mind to the next 20 years, everything is going to be African. Food, clothing, workforce.
Crazy.
You know, it's Africa is the future. If you just look at the demographics, but it's not going to be automatic. You know, if Africa will be the workforce, will produce the workforce of tomorrow that countries that are now aging populations would rely on, that workforce needs to be skilled, and it needs to be able to service a world in a win-win way. So if we don't develop the youth, it can only lead to another exploitation, where you have young people who are not going to places out of choice, but out of a need to survive. And in the process, they get exploited. So I'm talking about migration, whether you call it illegal, irregular, whatever.
It is still movement of people.
But so we need to expand choices for the people. And the way we expand choice is by making sure we're investing in their capabilities, in their ability to compete with the world and to compete for the wealth and the resources, but also to contribute to it. And so we've really, in UNDP, prioritized innovation and entrepreneurship, because talking about what keeps me awake at night is that we're churning out millions of talented young people and not giving them opportunity to match their ambition. I wouldn't call it a time bomb waiting to explode. It's opportunity lost to Africa when we don't invest in that talent, So, 11 million young people that are ready for the workforce every year in Africa. We're only able to create 3.7 million jobs. What is happening to the others, who are not in those jobs? Well, just think about it. What are all these young people doing? And we know that governments will never be able to meet that need.
Yeah.
But we also know that Africa is developing at a time when technology and innovation is common stream. So helping us to accelerate and to also lower the barriers of entry. So we've come big on innovation, and you may have heard of this initiative that we launched 2 years ago called Timbuktu. And really, this is still the largest initiative to support the innovation ecosystem, because we want to get away from projects and start talking about platforms and portfolios. So development in the last 6 decades has been very much about piloting things, and projectization, and very small scale and quite fragmented.
And sometimes it fails, people move on.
Exactly. So now it's, our focus is on systems. We need to create systems that unlock potential. And Timbuktu is one such program. It is at scale. What do we want to do? We look at all this talent. We say, okay, let's support at least 10,000 startups.
Wow, that's a huge number.
Let us scale 1,000 of those. Scaling meaning getting them to the level of gazelles and unicorns, because that's where you can deepen the capital market. Because we also don't want to just stick with survival entrepreneurship, livelihood entrepreneurship, which is, where you find a lot of development financing.
You are right at the entry level.
Exactly, and people stay there, and as long as they have some basket they're weaving, that's fine. I think we have to give everyone an opportunity to at least meet their daily needs. But we also have to start thinking about how these brilliant ideas that our young people are talking about can go to market and become big companies and actually generate ideas that change the world. We have a lot of tough development challenges that require innovation and technology. Our young people are finding solutions. They are finding solutions in the health sector. They are finding solutions in agriculture sector. They are finding solutions in creative sector. They are finding solutions in fintech, how we do e-commerce, in financial inclusion. Why don't we support them in an intentional way rather than just treat them like some, problem to be managed? So that's really the vision of Timbuktu, that over the next 10 years, we want to concentrate on bringing catalytic and commercial capital into the room. We want to concentrate on making sure that those startups are able to get the support they need from their governments when it comes to policy and regulations. That regulations stimulate, not strangulate their ideas and their innovations. We want to make sure that universities are part of the equation. Just this week, we launched the University Innovation Pod at the University of Johannesburg, not far from here. It's one of 15 that we have launched since Timbuktu was established. And the idea is to have one in every African country. And it's really providing spaces for our young people at universities to experiment, to incubate, to prototype their ideas, but then also giving them the skills, the mentorship, the access to take those ideas to market so that they become job creators themselves.
So, leadership. This is a very practical example, Timbuktu, of where there's been a thinking through the end-to-end plan on how do you move from ideation to exploratory implementation to sustainability. We have Agenda 2063. Clearly, Africa is not short of ideas. None. I mean, they are brilliant, brilliant ideas. What kind of leadership do we require? We had this first generation that focused on political leadership, particular characteristics, but now we're entering this digital age where we're solving historical problems, current problems, and we still have to preempt the future, and not as a problem, but as an opportunity. So, in your view, what kind of leadership do we require?
It's a big topic, leadership, and everybody's talking about it globally and also in Africa. But I don't think it's so complicated, even if it's facing a complicated world. I think if we break down leadership as service, the rest can come.
Okay.
Because, you don't lead alone, and you don't have to be an expert in everything as a leader. But you need to have a few things as a leader. You need to have integrity. People need to be able to trust you so that your yes is your yes, your no is your no. We have a trust deficit today in the leadership landscape. And I think that's the first thing that needs to be corrected. People are not expecting you to be perfect.
Or to be a savior.
Or to have solutions for everything. But they expect you to have integrity. To deliver what you promise, and when you don't deliver, to give an explanation, to account for it. So accountable leadership, I think, is what people are looking for. They're not looking for too much. Basically recognize that you're dealing with human beings who have needs, but also one of those needs is to be able to trust you. So trustworthiness trust is really key for me. I think also, I just came from Rwanda, where we were inducting 39 young female leaders, our fellows. This is one of the programs I established when I started this job, because I also think we don't have enough women in the space of leadership, and women do lead differently from men. I'm not saying that they're necessarily better, but I think our leadership is deficient because it's just one gender most of the time. So
within one age set.
Sorry?
Within the same age set.
Within the same age set. So there's the demographic, but then there is also the gender. And so we're actually trying to change that picture by nurturing this group of young female leaders who we bring into UNDP to learn how to be, the leaders for the 21st century. We give them the exposure. In Rwanda, for instance, we were having them meet different personalities who have walked this journey and learn from them, give them space to debate the issues and to choose what side they're going to be on. So we need to be deliberate about nurturing and cultivating the leadership that is fit for the 21st century. And I think that is a contribution that we're making to look at also that gender side. We've got, 2-3 female heads of state
now.
In a continent of 54 countries. That in itself is a problem. But I think overall for me, leadership is what's really undermining what you just talked about, which is the fact that we've got the strategies, we've got the frameworks, we've got, at all levels, by the way. Every single country's got a vision, this, vision, that. We've got national strategies. We've got the African Union, we've got the regional economic communities. Africa is so well structured and actually prepared in that sense. But I think we need to get the governance right.
Correct.
You've been a governance specialist. And by governance, I don't just mean fighting corruption. I mean, local governance, I mean digital governance, I mean natural resource governance. Which is one of the biggest ones where, we're seeing a lot of losses to the continent because this is not properly governed. So I think if we get leadership right, a lot of other things will follow.
So, Ahunna, as we conclude, I like the perspective that you've brought to this conversation. First, it's important for us to have self-belief and self-confidence. But it's also important to be clear about the fundamental of leadership as service, and to understand we don't lead alone, right? There's a whole country. Interestingly, Africa is constantly, there are people coming to teach Africa, teaching Africans how to save, teaching Africans how to invest, teaching Africans how to cook, teaching Africans how
really?
to, it's all sort of strange things. As we conclude, when you're looking at this global Africa and saying these are the 3 or 4 lessons Africa can offer the world, because these are things we've done well, we do well, and these are things the rest of the world may be struggling with. What are those African lessons?
I think if you think about what's missing in the world today, I think we are retreating from solidarity and the whole essence of, again, coming back to this Ubuntu concept. And if you look at how Africa navigated COVID, there was built in there actually the principle of solidarity. I remember the Ethiopian Airways solidarity flights when no one would get the essentials to Africa.
In fact, they forgot, even when African billionaires said we have the money.
Exactly.
Nobody was willing
Nobody was opening up. And the continent started to come together and say, in fact, Africa was extending support to the Caribbean. So I think that sense of solidarity, I mean, you look at who hosts the largest number of displaced persons and refugees today.
It is Africa.
It's Africa. You see countries opening their doors. I served in Uganda. And it was very moving for me to hear the leadership of that country say, we don't want refugees to be encamped. These are our people. That borders divided us doesn't mean, in fact, some of them speak the same language as us, whether they were coming from the Congo or from South Sudan, or, from anywhere in the neighborhood. They wanted to integrate them. So I remember we coined something called Rehope, which was really saying that refugees and host communities had to be treated the same way. So the government was giving land to refugees, and our support was not just directed at one group. We looked at it as an integrated thing. You go to Ethiopia, which is another country where I served. Over 1 million refugees, and then IDPs, and lots of them now being given opportunities not only to go to school, but also to get opportunities for business and livelihoods. So Africa's solidarity, I think, is one that the world could benefit from today, because that solidarity remains strong. I was in Chad, a country that is itself struggling, and it took lots of refugees from Sudan, and again with generosity from the host communities. You just try putting refugees in certain countries today, even in small numbers, all right?
True. Yeah.
But I think also what we're doing in terms of climate change. So Africa is not a huge emitter of this, but we're impacted. And you find that a lot of countries, UNDP has helped countries to formulate their national determined contributions. And in no country did we see any resistance to committing to what it would take to secure a planet and to get to net zero. And you see many strategies being undertaken in these countries that actually, if you ask me, because of the gap that we still have in development, they're a little bit more justified to say we drop all of this so that we can, develop fast. But you see countries like Kenya going 93% renewable. in their energy usage. And that is one country that could achieve 100% renewable energy source for their energy dependence. And, many, many examples that Africa is leading. And we had the Africa Climate Summit, and Africa said, look, we've actually got solutions, and we're going to take this to the world. We're no longer just going to sit and be told what to do. We can participate equally in finding the solutions. I always say, Brian, that this continent is shaped like a question mark. Just look at the map of Africa. It's like a question mark, but Africa actually has the answer that the world needs. In many areas, it's not just these two areas that I mentioned, but first, the continent needs to develop more confidence in its own solutions. The homegrown solutions that are often sort of put behind because we think what's coming from outside is better.
It's better.
You go to the rural areas, there's an assumption as development players that because these people don't have everything, that because they're poor, they don't know. And yet, when you care to listen, those people actually have the answers in their hands. They have the resilience, they have the coping mechanisms. They can give you the script on how to solve the problems on the ground and transform things. But it's the systems that hold these solutions back, and that's why that needs to be tackled. Africa has a lot of homework to do, and African leaders and governance structures, a lot of homework to remove the bottlenecks that stop people from going forward.
Ahunna, we could have this conversation for a long time, but amazing. I didn't know this, that first formative years, a war child, and here you are, not only solving African humanitarian and conflict and governance and development challenges, but also inspiring an entire new generation of leaders. Global Africa is not possible without leadership. Leadership would be central. It's not possible without institutions, but also not possible without ideas. I look forward to having a second conversation with you in the future, where perhaps we will have the opportunity to see some of the scaled up Timbuktu inductees, the first generation. But thank you so much for making the time. I know you're very busy. It's a very busy schedule. On behalf of CAPSI and the Wits Business School, most grateful that you could join.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the CAPSI podcast series, Conversations on African Philanthropy.